We continue our lectures in theoretical English grammar. The topic of lecture 3 is morphology as the study of internal structure of words and basic morphological concepts of English grammar. The most basic concept of morphology is the concept of a word. Every speaker of every language knows thousands of words. Words form an important part of our linguistic knowledge. They constitute a component of our mental grammar too. Without words, we would be unable to convey our thoughts through language. At the same time, we may know thousands of words and still not know the language. There are two different notions of word, a dictionary word and a text word. A dictionary word is an abstract entity called a lexeme. This is because the mental dictionary we have in our heads is called the lexicon. Different from it, a text word is a concrete entity called a word form. Word forms are concrete as they are pronounced and used in texts. A set of word forms that belongs to a lexeme represents its grammatical paradigm. For instance, the words live, lives, lived, has lived, or has been living are different word forms of the lexeme live. Therefore, they constitute its grammatical paradigm. But not all morphological relations are of the indicated type. Different lexemes may also be related to each other. A set of related lexemes represent a word family, though it might properly be called a lexeme family. For example, two English word families are read, readable, unreadable, reader, readability, reread, and reading, or logic, logician, logical, logically, illogic, illogical, illogically, and illogicality. Although everyone recognizes that these words are related, they are given their own dictionary entries. Thus, the difference between word forms and lexemes on the one hand and between paradigms and word families on the other is well established and it's known to all educated language users. There are two kinds of different morphological relationship among words. The first is derivational relationship, which exists among lexemes of a word family, such as beauty, beautiful, beautifully, beautify, etc. In this case, we have to do with derivational morphology. The other type of relationship between words is inflectional relationship, which exists among word forms within the paradigm of a lexeme. For instance, the word forms give, gives, gave, is giving, has given, has been giving, etc. are interconnected through inflectional relationship. Correspondingly, we have to do in this case with inflectional morphology. This distinction is central to morphology and constitutes its subject area. Words have internal structure which is rule-governed. For example, uneaten, uninteresting, ungrammatical are words in English, but eaten on, interesting on, and grammatical on to mean not eaten not interesting, not grammatical, are not, because in English we do not form a negative meaning of a word by suffixing, that's by adding on to the end of the word, but we form it by prefixing, that's by adding on to the beginning of a word. Some people think that words are the basic meaningful elements of language, but we have already seen that this cannot be so, since some words contain several distinct units of meaning that are called morphemes. So, a morpheme is the most elemental meaningful unit of language. The word is derived from the Greek morph, which means a form. What is morphology? Morphology is the study of internal structure of words and the rules by which words are formed. Somewhat paradoxically, morphology is both the oldest and one of the youngest subdisciplines of grammar. It's the oldest because, as far as we know, the first linguists were primarily morphologists. On the one hand, we find a number of lists of morphological forms of Sumerian words on clay tablets dating from around 1600 BC. We know that Sumerian was the traditional literary language of Mesopotamia. On the other hand, morphology was also prominent in the writings of the antique grammarians of India, Greece, and Rome. The term morphology was invented in the second part of the 19th century, and it means the science of word forms, morph indicating a form and logy indicating science of or a branch of knowledge of. As Haspelmass indicates in his book Understanding Morphology, earlier there was no need for a special term because the term grammar mostly implied word structure, that's morphology. The terms phonology for sound structure and syntax for sentence structure had existed for centuries when the term morphology was introduced. Thus, in this sense, morphology is a young discipline. As grammarians indicate, part of knowing a language is knowing its morphology. Like most linguistic knowledge, this is generally unconscious knowledge. As we already mentioned in the previous lecture, a morpheme is a minimal meaningful lingual unit which may be represented by a sequence of sounds or a single sound if it has a meaning. For instance, the words built, cats, and windy consist of two morphemes, one of which is the root morpheme, which is built up by a sequence of phonemes, whereas the other morpheme is an affixal inflection represented by a single meaningful phoneme, respectively indicating in the word built, grammatical meaning of past tense, in the word cats, grammatical meaning of number, that's plurality, and in the word windy, grammatical meaning of quality. Thus, a morpheme is an arbitrary union of a form or sounds and a meaning, as the link between them is a matter of convention. Every word in every language is composed of one or more morphemes. For instance, the word boy consists of one morpheme, while the words boyish and boyishness are composed of two or three morphemes. There are also words which consist of four or more than four morphemes, like gentlemanliness or ungentlemanliness and many others. The decomposition of words into morphemes illustrates one of the fundamental properties of human language, discreteness. In all languages, discrete linguistic units combine in rule-governed ways to form larger units. Sounds units or phonemes combine to form morphemes. Morphemes combine to form words, and the words combine to form larger units, phrases and sentences. Discreteness is one of the properties that distinguishes human languages from other communication systems. As Fromkin, Rodman and Himes indicate, our knowledge of these discrete units and the rules for combining them accounts for creativity of human language, which refers to a person's ability to produce and understand an infinite range of sentences never spoken or heard before. Now we start introducing basic morphological concepts of English grammar. The first pair of concepts we are going to discuss is roots and stems. A root is a lexical content morpheme that cannot be analyzed any further into smaller parts. Morphologically complex words consist of a root and one or more affixes. Some examples of English roots are paint in painter, read in read, sieve in conceive, etc. The root is obligatory for any word, while affixes are not obligatory. The affixal morphemes include prefixes, suffixes, and inflections. Of these, prefixes and suffixes have word-building or derivational functions, while inflections have only grammatical, that's form-building function. Derivational morphemes, such as suffixes and prefixes, when affixed to roots and stems, change the grammatical word class and the basic meaning of the word. For instance, beauty and beautiful, interest, interesting, and others. Thus, derivational affixal morphemes express the specifications that are of lexical and grammatical character. When a root morpheme is combined with a derivational affix, it forms a stem, which may or may not be a word. For example, painter is both a word and a stem, while siever is only a stem. Different from prefixes and suffixes, inflections have strictly grammatical or form-building function. Inflectional morphemes never change the grammatical word class they are attached to. They only mark such properties, such morphological categories as tense, aspect, voice, number, case, and so forth. They signal grammatical relations and are required by the rules of sentence formation. Inflectional morphemes in English typically follow derivational morphemes. Compared to many languages of the world, English has relatively few inflections. According to Fromkin's data, at the present stage of English history, there are totally 8 inflectional affixes. Below, we offer a list of these inflectional affixes borrowed from an Introduction to Linguistics by Fromkin and others. So, on your monitors you see English inflectional morphemes. They are represented by 8 of them. The first is S, that indicates third person singular present. For instance, she waits at home. The second is ed, that forms past tense. She waited at home. The third is ing, forming progressive aspect. For instance, she is eating a donut. The next is "en", that forms past participle. For instance, Mary has eaten the donuts. The fifth is "s", plural. She ate the donuts. The sixth is apostrophe "s", forming the possessive case. Dices here is short. The seventh is "er", forming the comparative degree of adjectives. Dicer has shorter here than carry. And the last is "est", forming the superlative degree of adjectives. For instance, Dicer has the shortest hair. The next pair of concepts is bound and free morphemes and allomorphs. Our morphological knowledge has two components: knowledge of the individual morphemes and knowledge of the rules that combine them. One of the things we know about particular morphemes is whether they can stand alone or whether they must be attached to a host morpheme. Accordingly, linguists differentiate between free and bound morphemes. Morphemes that can constitute words by themselves are called free morphemes. Free morphemes can only be represented by root morphemes. For instance, morphemes like boy, desire, gentle, man are free morphemes. Bound morphemes cannot form words by themselves. They are identified only as component segmental parts of words. That's why they are always represented by affixal morphemes such as prefixes, suffixes, and inflections. For instance, in the word handful, the root hand is a free morpheme, while the suffix ful is a bound morpheme. Let's take another word, unreadable, in which the root read is a free morpheme, while the prefix on and the suffix able are again bound morphemes. Morphemes have different shapes under different circumstances. For instance, the plural morpheme in English is pronounced as s after voiceless consonants as in cats, cups, pets, etc. After vowels and voiced consonants, it is pronounced as z, as in toys, dogs, bags, apples, etc. Sometimes this plural morpheme is pronounced as is, as in the words like faces, cases, paces, and so forth. There are also other morphemes that mark the plurality of nouns. For instance, the morpheme es, is, which is used in the words ending in s, double s, sh, ch, and x, as in buses, businesses, bushes, benches, boxes, and so on. Or the morpheme en, as in children and oxen. For such cases, linguists use the term allomorph. If two or more morphs have the same meaning or function and the difference in their form is explained by different environments, these morphs are said to be in complementary distribution and they are considered to be the allomorphs of the same morpheme. Thus, the allomorphs of the plural morpheme s, z, and is stand in phonemic complementary distribution, while the plural allomorph n in oxen and children stand in morphemic complementary distribution. Thus, we have discussed the notion and origin of morphology. We have outlined its subject area, focusing on the internal structure of the word. In this respect, we have discussed the difference between word forms and lexemes on the one hand, and between paradigms and word families on the other. We have also reviewed basic morphological relations between words and accordingly discussed and analyzed derivational and inflectional ways of word and form building. While doing it, we introduced and explained the main morphological concepts of grammar, pointing out the difference between the root and the stem, bound and free morphemes, derivational and inflectional morphemes, allomorphs, and so on.